of Rambling Reference.
What happens when two librarians go for a walk?
This episode is Walk 20 Willamette Cove to St. John's Main Street Loop in the 2005 edition of the Portland Hill Walk book by Laura Foster. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Becky.
So this walk, we were walking around St. John's and not walking around Willamette Cove, as we will talk about later. St. John's was named for the first white settler on the peninsula, James Jimmy Johns, who may have been, quote, sainted because of his support of schools and the community. And I would like to point out that his name was actually Johns, not John apostrophe S, which I've seen a lot of people spell St. John's with the apostrophe, but it's
not the possessive Johns.
Yes, that was actually his last name.
So, St. John's was a man who lived, as we were saying, like mid-18th century or 19th century. So,
yeah.
It was long time
so he moved there, I believe, like 1860s.
Okay. And he's, still very revered in town. So St. John's has a very industrial feel to it. It still did while we were there, even though a lot of the industry has moved on, and some of it has become a little bit gentrified.
Yes. So we started out near McMenamin's St. John's Theater and Pub. It started its life at the Lewis and Clark Exposition and was barged to its current location in 1905.
Which we were saying is kind of amazing, considering these days when we see a house being trucked from one place to another. To imagine it being
like horsed
and carted and barged must have been pretty amazing in these days.
And just having to lift it up. I mean, I assume they have jacks back
Sure.
then, but it would have been more manual and not hydraulic.
Similar tools, just more people power.
Yes. Yeah.
That would have been quite a sight. So yes, they did move it a long way, and it was...
I think some church originally moved it.
Right.
And it's been several things over the years. But the McMenamins took it over, and they usually do a pretty good job renovating places.
I have been in there, and it is nice.
Oh, cool.
So it was a beautiful day for our walk.
So beautiful.
Gorgeous fall day.
Yes.
Perfection. And we got the colors and the blue sky.
And really bright sunlight.
Yes.
Very bright sunlight for Portland, I might even say.
And it was warm.
Yes. And really beautiful views of the bridge.
Yes.
When we could actually see it. One of the places the author told us to stop and look at the bridge. It was actually a huge blackberry bramble now. But we were able to see it in other places.
Yes, we got some very good views then. And later on in the walk, one of the first houses we saw that we really liked was a modern, sort of newer construction home that was really beautiful. Yeah. And I looked it up, and it's only $1.25 million. So we'll save our pennies for that one.
Right. I was thinking, I don't know if we could even get like 5 people together to buy something like that.
But from the pictures online, it's beautiful. It has a great view of the river. It just sort of had an aesthetic that I liked that wasn't like the McMansions we've seen in other places.
Yeah, it was smaller and it really fit into the landscape.
Yes.
It looked bigger in the pictures. I think you had mentioned it's like goes down the edge of the bluff.
Right.
Sort of there's more to
double, I guess 2 stories. But
yeah.
I don't know what they call that when it goes down, when the top of the house is the entry and then the down portion is the rest of the house.
It's not a split level.
Not really.
No.
Huh. But anyway, so it wasn't, it wasn't imposing on the street the way some houses are, but it still had a lot of room and it looked really nice inside.
Yeah. And then we walked past the oldest standing house in St. John's, which was built in 1886 for Amos Minor, and it sits on his original land claim. And it was built in the classic revival style. And I was curious about that, so I looked it up, and it just basically means anything. It's like, as long as it has symmetry and proportions, it's classic revival.
So it's good to use in conversations to make yourself sound smart and just say, oh, yes,
exactly.
Classic revival.
Yes, and that's a good point.
And then, you can't be proved wrong on that.
Right. And then, if you have, like, repeating elements like windows, and I would hope you'd have more than one window in your house.
So another house built by Amos Minor was once home to Luzanna Graves, one of two women doctors in early 1900s Portland. And I did try to find more information about her. I looked through some historical Oregonians, and I couldn't really find anything. Her name was mentioned often in some sort of lists or maybe some ads, about the bad doctors, but I couldn't find any actual information about her. I'm sure with some deeper digging I could, but just sort of general information I couldn't find, unfortunately.
And it was a cute little house. It was tucked away, away from the road, and it looked like it had a lot of plants and greenery around it.
Yeah.
Nice porch. And then we went past another Amos's house, but this was Amos Benson's house. And I will talk about that later. And we also walked around the park next to it for some, again, really lovely views.
Very nice. Several bridges and the river.
Yes, and the sun.
And the sun. And we met a couple of dogs. And
yes,
saw some poop.
Some dogs who were friendly, but as soon as we got near their humans, it started barking. And,
yes, friendly but suspicious.
Yes, trust but verify.
Yes. So this is the part where we got to the Willamette Cove, which we, according to the book, were supposed to travel down to and be able to see. And it was sort of more of the nature walk of this walk. The author indicated that we would see that it was gated, but that we should just jump that gate and go along and take the rest of the walk. However,
like the gate doesn't really mean anything.
Yes, the gate it was for cars. The gate obviously it was, but there were signs put up since the edition of this book that indicated there was some danger ahead and that we really shouldn't go in there. It was sort of no walking, no camping, don't go in.
And do you remember if the sign actually mentioned lead?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I know we talked about it.
Yes.
So perhaps the book mentioned lead.
Yeah.
But yes, the signs were pretty clear, but Becki and I still debated. Should we do it anyway? Should we go down there? We want to see it. It's part of the walk. Maybe it's no big deal.
Right.
But then again, maybe it's bad down there.
And I know people have gone down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clearly, yes. And then suddenly, a couple of Metro employees in a truck drove up, and they made the decision for us.
Yeah.
They were nice. Or the woman got out of the car to open the gate, and she spoke with us and said, it's not a good idea. So we decided to be good librarians and not break the law and get arrested and be in the Willamette week. How bad we were.
And so we walked back up the hill and decided to just kind of walk around the neighborhood. And while we were walking back up the hill, I was reading the rest of that section of the hike, and it was basically we skipped the entire section 3 of the walk.
Yes.
And the list of all of the contaminants and bad things in that section were really disturbing.
Yes.
And I'm glad that we didn't go.
I'm glad too.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're trying to clean it up. So
Yes.
hopefully someday we'll be able to walk down.
Right.
That would be nice.
On our next round of walks.
But the neighborhood was nice.
Yeah,
And
it was nice to walk around without reading out of the book, because we got to chat.
Becki got to face forward and walk without reading.
And not trip.
Yes.
And so the route we took through the neighborhood, we just kind of went around north instead of south through Willamette Cove, and went around to the end point of where we would have come out of the cove. Right. And there was a lot of campers.
Yes.
A lot of trash.
Yeah. Looked like people had used it as a dump, more or less.
There was also a security guard sitting there.
Yes.
In
sitting
a car.
in his truck.
And I'm like, is he patrolling here or is he on a break?
Yeah, I couldn't tell. And then another man that came around the corner was sort of yelling, I don't think at us, but just in general.
Oh, so I thought I heard him say like good morning or something. So I was like, good morning. And
yeah,
but I should mention that I'm partially deaf and I mishear things a
well,
lot.
no, I think he was saying that, but I don't know
not
how
to
friendly
us.
he meant it to be.
Okay.
Or I don't think he was being dangerous. He was just, I think, having maybe some things going on in his head and saw us walking and was...
That prompted some verbalness.
Right.
And at this point, the rest of the walk was perfumed with pot. Like, so much pot.
Yes. As if there were a big party at every house we passed.
Oh my God.
There was something going on. Yeah.
So much. And it was, like you mentioned, not growing.
Right.
Like, that's not what pot smells like when it's growing. That's what it smells like when you smoke it.
Yeah, so either, like, maybe there was, like, a backyard party somewhere that we just could, it was just the wind was just right.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I don't know. Or the police were having a big burn somewhere. Well, they don't really do that anymore now that it's...
I hope not.
Illegal.
Oh my God, that sounds like it could be really bad. Oh my God. So then we started heading towards the shore, and there's a really nice paved sidewalk, and it goes past the Water Pollution Control Laboratory building and grounds, and we both really liked that.
It was an interesting building.
Yeah, it was, kind of a nondescript building, but the landscaping was really, really well done and really nice. And I think she mentioned in the book, or maybe one of the plaques that we read, that they used native plants. Yes,
you could tell it was very purposefully built for its place. It seemed to really fit into nature.
Yeah. And Lori and I both agreed it'd make a great location for a library. Nice big building, good windows.
We're always on the lookout for that.
Yeah. Good landscaping. Maybe not the best location. Good parking.
But out of the way a little bit.
Yeah. And then there was a pond behind it that it was completely dry. Well, not completely dry. It was like muddy, but it was just mostly reeds and mud.
Right.
And it was supposed to be a filtration system for...
From the runoff of the roof, it looked like it would come down, get somehow filtered through the pond, and then run back downhill to the river.
Oh, okay.
So it was sort of there was a sign there that was sort of telling us how it happened, but it wasn't actually happening, so it was hard to imagine.
Yes.
So then from there we went on to Cathedral Park, where I had not been, but Becki had.
Yes.
And she had mentioned to me that she saw a truck in the park there once, and I went, oh, that's nice. But in the moment, even though I know what truck in the park is, I was imagining something completely different. Like, people would meet at the park and just walk around together and trek through the park.
Oh.
Then when I saw it written down here in front of me, I realized, oh, it was trek in the park, which you want to explain more what that is.
So there was a theater group who would every summer put on live productions of the original series Star Trek episodes. So it was a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry, I never saw it.
Yeah, I think it went on for either like 3 to 5 years. I'm not sure. I still miss it. It's so great. They would follow the original script, and since it was a live production, not a whole lot of special effects, but they really did a good job of make-believe. So I could talk about it for a very long time, which I will.
And I'm
not.
glad I figured out what you meant.
Yes.
Eventually. It took me a long time. And then at one point, poor Becki felt again like she was going to faint. But no, we were on a dock on the river, and we knew, we figured that out. We walked down sort of a gangplank to this floating dock, which was right under the bridge and really beautiful, but it was moving up and down with the water.
I did not realize at first, and I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna like pass out again. This is awful. And then I was like, oh, wait, Lori, am I moving? Like, is this moving? What's going on?
To your credit, it was very slight movement. It did take a minute to notice, oh, this is moving, and put it all together. So, but I'm glad you weren't fainting.
Me too.
But the floating was not pleasant for me either. So we got off the dock pretty quickly, even though it was really gorgeous being under the bridge like that, having that view.
Again, great views. Water was just really like sparkling off the water. We could see down the river several bridges.
We saw several ships go by.
Yeah, that was really cool
including
too.
While we were down there, so that was very neat.
Yeah. Then St. John's Bridge, which is kind of the main focal point of the walk, is incredibly beautiful. It was opened in 1931, and the architecture is very cathedral-like.
Yes.
Which is why the park underneath it is called Cathedral Park, and you'll see businesses in St. John's that have cathedral in the name. There's a lot of, they call them, I think the things that are in the water are piers. I think of them as spires. There's a bunch of spires on the bridge, but she called them piers in the book.
Okay.
I don't know if that's like the base of it or the whole thing.
Okay.
And there's 10 of them on the whole bridge. And I learned that Gephrophobia is the name for a fear of crossing bridges, and I have that. There was one point where she suggested that we could kind of take a detour and walk across the bridge, and I was thinking, well, I'm game if you are.
But I also have some anxiety about it,
yeah.
so I didn't feel like we needed that either. So we both sort of agreed pretty quickly not to do that.
And one of the piers that is actually in Cathedral Park was the headquarters for the TV show The Librarians. They would, every time they were going to headquarters, you could see them going into the door in the pier, and they would meet up. But
it was meant to be like a secret space.
Yes.
Okay.
I doubt it looks like that in the actual pier, though. It's like not a whole lot of like dark wood and mahogany and books and stuff in there.
Another place for a library, then. That's inside there. So then, right after that, we noticed a building, which was the Moonstruck Chocolate Company. It was their headquarters and sort of where all the magic happens, where they make the chocolate. So within 2 seconds, we agreed we should go in.
Yes.
And we went up a set of stairs to the storefront, but it was closed because it was Saturday, and they were, I guess, only open 10 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. So we'll remember that if we go back. But we were
and the sign
annoyed.
faked us out.
Yes, there was an open sign, but then when we got closer, we saw that it was unlit.
Yeah, it was not turned on.
It was bright enough that that wasn't indicated previously. We were much annoyed by that.
But there was a delivery person.
Yes, right behind us.
And I was thinking we could be a little devious and take the delivery person's place and get in. Yes.
Although I suppose we would have to do some violence for that to happen, so we didn't.
Yes.
Again, we don't want to be in the papers for bad behavior.
Yeah. And then we finished up the walk in downtown St. John's. And I think the main attraction for that one was mentioned in the book, and you actually said it was something nice to see, which was the 1930s filling station, which is now a pizza restaurant.
Yes, you can get a slice at the filling station, but not gasoline.
Yeah, it's a nice Art Deco building. Yeah. It's been restored. It's shiny chrome, and I think the pumps are still there.
Yes, the pumps are still there.
Yeah. And a lot of the businesses she mentioned appeared to still be open, which is really nice because that doesn't always happen on a lot of our other walks. It's many things have been closed in the intervening 15 years.
Yes.
So what did you find particularly interesting on this walk?
So I had first thought about doing some research on Lizana. I think that was her name.
Luzana,
who we talked about earlier, was one of the first women doctors in Portland, but I couldn't find much information about her. So one of the buildings we came across near Cathedral Park was a warehouse, and we discovered from the book it had once housed Columbia Sportswear. And before that, it had been the Portland Woolen Mills. And then one day after we went on our walk, Gert Boyle, who was the owner of Columbia Sportswear, died. So I decided she seems like another interesting woman.
Yeah.
I'd dive a little deeper and see who she was. So Gert's parents fled Nazi Germany in 1937. She was only 13 years old, but they were able to get out. And when they got here to Oregon, her father purchased what was then called the Rosenfeld Hat Company. Apparently he had, in Germany, also owned some sort of hat or clothing business. So that worked for him. But, that was within a year of fleeing a country, being able to bounce back and buy a company. He changed the name to the Columbia Hat Company because of the river there, and several other businesses did that sort of thing. Just like we saw many businesses called Cathedral.
Yes.
He changed the name to Columbia. Eventually, over the years, they included sportswear for hunters and athletes. Gert grew up, went to college, got married, and stayed home to raise her 3 kids while her husband ran her father's company.
Oh.
Which is, I think, kind of an old story. In those days, often, a young woman whose father had a company would marry someone who was able to run the company and keep it in the family.
Had business acumen, or didn't.
or didn't. But apparently he did fine, and they had their kids. But unfortunately, he died fairly young of a heart attack. That happened in 1970. So she had to step up, and her college-age son at that time, Tim, and she ran the business. And they struggled for a while, but under her leadership, it became hugely successful, globally known. It went public at one point, so I think most people know Columbia Sportswear. I love it and wear it a lot. Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, has a joke that in the Northwest, they dress like a hike could break out at any moment. So I think that's pretty true.
Wait, it's funny because it's true.
And I often do am dressed like that.
I feel like I'm dressed like that right now.
So yes, if you don't know, Columbia Sportswear is all about sportswear. And so anyone who has lived in Oregon in the 80s and 90s at least will remember the ad campaign for the company, One Tough Mother. Are you familiar with that?
So after you mentioned that you were gonna be talking about her, I read the Willamette Week, and they had kind of a tribute to her in there, and it's like, do I remember those commercials? So I was actually watching a bunch online.
Yes, I did too.
Oh my gosh, I think my favorite ones are where she's just like madly cackling at the end of the commercial, like
she clearly seemed to enjoy it. From what I read, she really had to be talked into doing that ad campaign, but she ended up feeling like, clearly it was successful. It was pretty brilliant. So yes, all the ads, mostly the sort of video ads, featured Gert doing something outrageous to her son Tim, since they worked together in the company, to sort of prove the value of their wear. So she would be doing something in extreme weather that was very uncomfortable for poor Tim, where he had to be pushed off or rolled or go through something terrible, and he or at least in the commercials, pretended to hate it, and she pretended to sort of enjoy it. And one of my favorites was he is encased in the ice of an ice rink with just a straw to breathe through, and she rolls a Zamboni over him. So
does she laugh?
I don't remember if she laughed. I think she was just like sort of like grinning, like I get to do this. And so it was always about, see, our clothing can stand up to anything.
Yeah.
So that's, what I think of often when I think of Columbia Sportswear, and when I think of her and why I knew who she was in the first place. So that kind of made her famous. She was known as being tough, tenacious, sharp-witted. She was the first woman inducted into the Sporting Goods Hall of Fame, which is apparently a thing. I looked it up.
Sporting?
It's sort of, there's, yes.
I thought you meant Sports Hall of Fame. I'm like,
No.
wait, Sporting Goods?
No, Sporting Goods specifically. So there's an organization, like a professional association called the Sporting Goods Association of America or something like that.
Okay.
And they, every year, I guess, choose someone for their Hall of Fame. And it is a Hall of white men. I scrolled down all the pictures of the men, and then Gert is the first one to have won it, and then there's 4 or 5 other women.
So she was the first woman to win.
She was the first woman, and they all seem to be executives of sportswear companies or creation. So
what an odd thing.
I'm picturing the banquet,
Yeah.
Like they go and they announce the winner, and everybody's drunk and telling jokes and
sportswear jokes.
Exactly. But good for her, she obviously got that for a reason.
Yeah.
She anonymously donated $102 million, and I had to look that up twice because I wrote down 10.2 at first, and I went back to check my work. $102 million to OHSU, Oregon Health Sciences University.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was anonymous, but we only know it was her because later journalists were speculating which billionaire man must have done this, and she went, "Oh no, wait a minute,
excuse me,
I did that." So
wow,
yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I understand wanting to be anonymous, but then also that it's sort of, it's disrespectful to start, imagining
immediately
which man did it, when they're speculating. So she wanted to overcome that. So another story I've heard in the past that I knew about her was in 2010. She was 86 years old, and this guy came to her door and pushed into her home with a gun.
Oh my God.
He tied her up and really terrorized her. And
when she was 86?
Yeah, 86 years old.
Oh my God.
So she obviously was horrible, and she was able to convince him, I need to go turn off the house alarm or it's going to go off. It might call the police. Mm-hmm. But instead she actually pushed a panic button, which did call the police. So the police came and were able to help her. And I guess it was the guy had been working with a couple of other partners, and they were going to actually kidnap her and hold her for ransom. So luckily that did not happen.
Yeah.
So certainly that was horrible for her. Though she was traumatized, she seemingly bounced back to some extent. She still ran her company. She was very public, but she did move into a senior living facility for the last few years of her life. And she was 95 when she died.
Wow.
So I just thought, well, what a tough mother.
Yeah, right.
Interesting. I watched a couple of interviews online with her, and she's clearly like just one of those kind of kind, tough women who had to learn how to say what she thought, speak up, how to be tough to get things done.
Yeah.
And what a change in life too, where, you've raised your kids. She was probably expecting to settle down into retirement with her husband, and then, died so young. I think he was only 47.
Oh gosh.
So that would have been really tough. So I just think it's amazing that she stepped up, did what she had to do, and did it so well. Like, she had no idea what she was doing. At first, she and her son said they really messed up a lot and fired the wrong people and did the wrong things, but they just sort of figured it out. I think that's pretty cool. So what was your deep dive, Becki?
Okay, so as we mentioned before, we went past a house that was built either by or for Amos Benson, with the little park next to it. And it's a really neat house. I would not say a classic, whatever that was.
Revivalist? Was
yeah, a classic revival. It's got turrets, and it's a really neat, large house.
Yes.
And so in the book, she says the house was built in 1910 by Amos Benson. He was the son of Simon Benson, he of the Benson Bubbler fame, which are free water fountains all around Portland. But then I was looking at the auditor's office of the city of Portland, and they had the house listed as being built by Simon Benson for Amos in 1909 as a wedding gift.
Okay.
And then it was sold to Edmund Hall Cheney in 1924. And in the book, she says he sold it a decade later after he got divorced. And so Edmund Hall Cheney had a son of the same name, so I'm not sure who bought the house. The father made his money in lumber and logging and had 10 children, and his brother was maybe a senator.
Okay.
But then again, this information that I found might have been Henry F. Cheney. I was looking at genealogy sites, and those can get really confusing.
Yes.
Really fast.
Especially because census are so hard to read, and the names can be
Yeah.
mixed up really easily.
The Cheneys, who bought it, they lived there until Open Meadow High School opened in 1992 or 3. I'm pretty sure. I couldn't find any like intervening sales of the house between then and 1992. And in the book, she talked about Open Meadow High School, and we were looking at the house. We're like, we don't see any signs. Like, we're not really sure.
There was no indication. There's no teenagers running around.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, there was a parking lot, and like, I wonder how we can get in there and find out. But if it was a private school, it's, you know, and there were signs that said no trespassing.
Yes.
So we decided not to try to figure that out. And so when I was trying to find information about Open Meadow High School, I found an article on the Oregonian from 2014 that said that the high school was going to be closing the next year.
Okay.
And so then I went to the Internet Archive and found their old website. And so I got a lot of information. Yeah. I got a lot of information about them off of their own website, the archived version. The school was run by a private nonprofit group, I think at the time just called Open Meadows. It might have been Open Meadows Alternative Schools. It seems like they had kind of a few locations around Portland. And it was designed to help people who didn't fit into a typical public school system, which I think there's probably a lot of people. I know I didn't really enjoy my own time in high school.
I don't trust people who enjoyed high school, honestly.
I've met people like that.
I have
I'm like,
too.
what's wrong with you? Some stats from their site about the high school students they helped. 98% are underskilled, behind in credits, and under or unemployed. 84% are low income, and 10% are teen parents. The original Open Meadow Learning Center opened in 1971 in a downtown storefront serving homeless Portland street youth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they've been around for a while. They became a nonprofit in 1979 and opened the location in St. John's in the 90s.
So they were there for a while as a high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And there were a lot of really neat stories about the graduates and, you know, the interviews with them, like after they had graduated, and just about, you know, how they were just looking forward to their future, which, I mean, when I graduated in high school, I was not. Like, I didn't even really, I think, have a concept of the future. So
I think that is good, though, that there's places like that that have alternatives for kids that are struggling in one way or another and just need a different system.
Yes.
And, you know, I mean, we probably all need a different system than the regular American high school system, but some kids really do need something different and to encourage them and get them through. So that's cool.
And one of the programs they developed was Core Restoring the Urban Environment, or CREW. And I had a lot of trouble finding information about that. Found a lot of results for Motley Crue when I was looking for that. But no umlauts on this one. And from their old website, it actually sounded like a really interesting program to me. There were 3 tracks that students could take: natural resources, integrated marketing, and communications. And under the natural resources track, students could do things like conduct a native plants feasibility study. That sounds like what a great thing to be able to do in high school.
And yeah, you can learn so many skills doing a project like that. So many transferable skills can help you in any sort of job or profession.
And so, again, they announced in 2014 that they were closing, and the 2015 class would be the last graduating class. And from the letter from the director regarding the closing, we have known for years that working with our youth earlier increases our chance for deeper and everlasting transformation. So they closed so they could focus on middle school students. I see. And still from from this old archived website, their middle school step up and career services programs were indicated to still be running in North Portland. However, I think that I found the modern version of that. And it's Open School Northwest, and it looks like only the Step Up program is still running. It sounds like a really intensive program for the students. They work during the summer between middle school and high school, and then during the year, in their first year in high school, I think just, getting help and doing work towards staying in school. Okay. And they say that step-up students were more likely to graduate than any high school students.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and lowest dropout rate of all alternative programs in the state of Oregon. So again, that sounded like something that would be really great for any high school student.
Absolutely.
To be
just
able to take
more alternatives.
Of. Yeah. So the house itself was bought in 1993 for $425,000. Then in May of 2015 for $960,000. Wow. So that's when the school closed down. And the city of Portland in May of 2015 bought the land next to it and turned it into an actual park. So that is an official City of Portland park.
Okay.
Yes. But before that, the school allowed people to just kind of walk around there. And then in August of 2016, the house was bought for $1.5 million. So just a little bit more than that house we saw earlier in the walk. And from Portland Maps, I was able to tell that it was approved as a short-term rental in October of 2018. So that was just a little over a year ago from when we took our walk.
Yeah.
And I found different sites online that had that you could rent the top floor of the house, and 3 of the sites had 360-degree views, and they're all different. Huh. There's like different furniture. Some of them look photoshopped.
Oh, okay.
And I just I don't have enough experience renting places online to know if that's like normal or if I just wasn't seeing the pictures well.
Okay. So we have to do something to get in there.
Yes.
We'll walk up with clipboards and say, we're the inspectors. We need to see your house. Yeah. I mean, but there was somebody in there. There were a few cars in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So we couldn't really tell, are people just living there?
Well, I'm thinking that whoever bought the house, they maybe just live on the first 2 floors and then rent out the top 3rd floor. Because it was the other thing that it said on the site that, you absolutely cannot go down into the other floors because it's a private residence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the house is very cool. I'm glad you found out more about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I was really I thought that school program was neat, and I'm glad it's kind of still running in some form.
I like that idea. And how cool to go into that house for school every day.
Yeah.
What a different environment than the, sort of, I don't know, the 70s industrial schools I was used to.
Yeah.
Good walk.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
On our next episode, we'll be rambling around. Well, we don't know where we'll be rambling around yet. It'll be a surprise for all of us.